film opens on an old man named Paul, living in an old age home. Every morning he slips out quietly and walks to a small shelter, saying nothing to anyone. Next we see him back at home, watching a movie in the common room of the old age home. Something in it breaks him open. His eyes well up, and he gets emotional watching the film.
Oh, what is it?
A friend who lives there takes him outside and asks, "What was in that film that shook you like this?" Usually Paul never shared anything with anyone, but she was his close friend. So Paul draws a breath and begins his story. The screen falls into a flashback. It's 1935. Young Paul is a prison guard. The first time we see him, he's at the urinal, teeth clenched, a hot knife of pain slicing through him. He's battling a brutal urinary infection. He works this special block with other guards named Brutus and Dean, a place where men wait for their death. That's when another guard, Percy, enters in with a new prisoner.
We got a dead man walking here. Dead man walking.
This is a huge man, tall and broad like a giant. Percy, walking with a new prisoner in corridors, shouts, "Another one! He'll be dead soon." Percy is mean by nature. The other guards can't stand him. Paul tells him to leave the place because nobody wants him to be there, but he refuses until all the guards rise together and push him out.
God damn it, Percy, get the hell off my block!
As Percy goes, another inmate named Dell watches him running after the insult. He smiles at him, which triggers Percy, and he hit Dell's fingers with his baton, then walked away with attitude. Paul takes the new prisoner to his cell and asks his name. "John Coffey," he replies. "Like the drink, but spelled differently."
Like the drink, only not spelled the same.
He looks terrifying, but his mind is soft and childlike. He can't read or write. He's like a 10-year-old inside that giant body. He's scared of the dark, too. He asks Paul if they turn the lights off here. Paul says no. John reaches out. Paul shakes his hand. Paul started to question himself. How could a soul like this be on death row? To know more about John, he opens John's file and comes to know that 2 little girls had vanished from their home. Their father went searching and found them lifeless lying in John Coffey's arms.
I couldn't help it. I tried to take it back, but it was too late.
They arrested John on the spot, and the court gave him death. While Paul was reading John's file, the prison warden, Hal, who was one of Paul's closest friends, walks up to him. Hal looks troubled. He tells Paul that his wife has been very ill for some time now, suffering from terrible headaches. Paul consoles him, offering a few words of hope. Then their talk drifts to Percy. Everyone knows Percy has powerful connections up top, and Hal reveals that Percy has even filed a complaint against Paul. These are Depression-era days when losing a job could mean never finding another. That's why Paul, though he hates Percy, is forced to tolerate him. But it's no secret that nobody likes Percy. Hal explains that Percy has applied for a position at a mental hospital where the pay is better. He should be leaving soon. But when Paul wonders why Percy hasn't gone yet, Hal's voice hardens. Percy is cruel. He wants to stay until he's seen an execution up close. He wants to watch someone die. There's already a date set for an inmate named Arlen's execution. Maybe, Hal says, after that, Percy will finally leave.
Maybe then he'll be satisfied and move on.
In the next scene, we see Paul and Dean cleaning the electric chair, making it ready for the duty ahead. Suddenly, Brutus calls out to them from across the block, pointing toward the corner of the cell row. Over there, a little mouse keeps running toward them, grabbing a crumb of bread, and then running back into the darkness of a cell. The guards start worrying that this little mouse might be causing damage somewhere inside the prison walls. They try to catch it, but it's too quick and always slips away. The next day, Percy spots the same mouse. He runs after it, eager to kill it.
I'm going to kill you.
But the mouse vanishes away again, lost into the dark isolation cell. Percy, who is determined to kill the mouse, drags out all the storage piled up inside that cell, searching every corner but still finding nothing. He has created a mess and pulled everything out to find and kill that little thing, but fail now, he has to put it all back. The failure eats at him, leaving him even more frustrated than before. The next day comes, and the guards run a practice for an upcoming execution. The chair Paul and Dean were cleaning was the electric chair on which a person would be seated, and a wet sponge would be placed on his head so that current could easily pass through that person's body, and death could be little easy. But on the real execution day, when it's time for Arlen to die, Percy deliberately places a dry sponge on his head instead of a wet one. What happens next is horrific. Arlen went through a painful and tragic death, and everyone is forced to watch as he dies in unbearable pain. After the horrific execution, Paul tells Percy it's time for him to leave the prison for good. But Percy refuses, as he says he'll only go after he gets to run another execution himself. Until then, he's not going anywhere. Later, Paul meets with Warden Hal, who informs him that a new prisoner will arrive the next day. His name is Wild Bill Wharton, a dangerous, unpredictable criminal with a long list of violent offenses. The next day, Paul stands in the corridor, waiting for the new inmate to arrive. John Coffey quietly tells him to step aside.
Careful.
But Paul doesn't move. Moments later, Wild Bill jumps without warning and hits Paul hard in his private parts. Paul, already suffering from a urinary infection, collapses instantly in extreme pain. The guards wrestle Wild Bill under control and throw him into a cell. Paul, still in extreme pain, can barely stand. That's when John calls him over. Paul, in too much pain to think, walks toward John's cell. John reaches out through the bars, places his hands on Paul's private part, and grips firmly. Suddenly, the light bulbs overhead flare brighter and brighter until one bursts with a sharp pop. In the cell next door, Dell cries out in alarm at what he's seeing. Paul tries to calm him down. Then John started coughing and sit on the bed, and something strange like tiny swirling black particles rushed out of his mouth, drifting into the air before vanishing completely. Paul stares at him, shaken. "What did you just do?" he asks. John's answer is simple. "I helped." Later, Paul goes to relieve himself, and for the first time in weeks, there's no pain. His urinary infection is completely gone. It dawns on Paul that John has some kind of extraordinary gift. Determined to know more, Paul visits the lawyer who defended John. But the man has almost nothing to offer. There are no police records from before John's arrest, no trace of him in any official files. Nobody knows where he came from, and nobody had ever seen him before that day.
Like he dropped out of the sky.
How can that be?
The new prisoner, Wild Bill Wharton, quickly proves himself a constant source of trouble. He spits in Paul's face, urinates on others, and generally causes chaos whenever he can. One day, as Percy walks past his cell, Wild Bill seizes the moment, grabbing Percy through the bars. That's enough to earn him a trip straight to the isolation cell. Then the day comes for Dell's execution. By now, Dell has made the little mouse his pet, the same one Paul and Percy had seen before. He's named it Mr. Jingles. Dell's only wish is that someone take care of Mr. Jingles after he's gone. But before that promise can be secured, Mouse rushes away, and Percy, cold and deliberate, steps on it, crushing it under his boot. Dell is heartbroken, devastated by the sudden loss of his beloved pet. Paul gently picks up the tiny, lifeless body. John Coffey, watching everything from his cell, calls Paul over. He tells Paul to place the mouse in his hands. Paul hesitates, then obeys as soon John cups the mouse in his big hands and breathes over it. A soft, shimmering light glows between his palms. Moments later, Mr. Jingles was alive again. The little creature rushes across the floor and runs straight back to Dell's side. Dell's face breaks into a smile, eyes shining with joy at the sight of his beloved pet returned to him. The next day, it's Dell's turn to face the electric chair. Percy is assigned to oversee the execution. Again, instead of wetting the sponge for Dell's head like the procedure demands, Percy deliberately leaves it dry. Dell's death is slow and painful. His body shakes hard as the electricity burns him inside. He screams and twists in pain until it finally stops. And everyone who was forced to see that horrific incident feels upset and scared. Afterward, Paul goes to see John. John quietly tells him that he felt all of Dell's pain, that it had been unbearable. And not just him, Mr. Jingles, too, had felt it, which is why the little mouse ran away trembling in fear. Days later, during lunch, Paul and the other guards find themselves talking about Warden Hal's wife, who has a brain tumor. Paul shares his belief that John's powers could also heal her. Slowly, they begin forming a plan to sneak John out of the prison and take him to Hal's house. First, they drug Wild Bill's dinner to put him into a deep sleep. Then they lock Percy in the dark isolation cell. With that done, they start moving John toward the exit. But as they pass Wild Bill's cell, who was awake, reaches out and grabs John's arm. The moment their skin touches, John flinches and begins to weep, his face twisted in pain. Paul quickly forces Wild Bill's hand away. Wild Bill collapses into unconsciousness while John stands there, shaken to his core. The guards lead John out of the prison. The moment he steps outside, his face lights up. He tilts his head back, gazing at the night sky like it's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. Being so close to nature makes him deeply, quietly happy. Paul asks him, "Do you know where we're taking you?" John nods. "To help a woman," he says. Paul, surprised, asks how he knew that. John doesn't explain much, just that he knows. Somehow he always knows. They bring him to Warden Hal's house, where Hal's wife lies gravely ill in bed. John walks into her room and softly introduces himself. "My name's John Coffey." Like the drink, only not spelled the same.
John Coffey, ma'am. Like the drink, only not spelled the same.
Then, with immense gentleness, he leans over her and takes her face in his huge hands. Slowly, he begins to draw something out of her, pulling in her sickness, her pain. After a long, tense moment, she gasps awake, her eyes clear. The illness is magically gone. Tears of relief and joy fill the room. Hal's wife thanks John, asking his name again. When he repeats it, saying John, she smiles and completes the same line back to him. John Coffey liked the drink, only not spelled the same. She tells him she had a dream that she was lost in a deep, dark place, but someone found her there and guided her out. She believes that person was John. Then she removes a locket from around her neck and presses it into his hand as a gift. But the healing has drained John completely. His massive frame seems smaller now, his steps slower. Paul and the others help him to his feet and quietly guide him back toward the prison. Back at the prison, Paul unlocks the isolation cell and drags Percy out. As he passes John's cell, Paul suddenly grabs Percy by the neck and forces him up against the bars and transfers all of the sickness he had taken from the warden's wife straight into Percy's mouth. Percy stumbles back, dazed and confused, his eyes wild. Without saying a word, he walks straight to Wild Bill's cell. He pulls out his gun and shoots him dead. The moment Wild Bill collapses, Percy drops the weapon and falls to the floor, shaking and choking badly, and then black, swirling particles pour from his mouth into the air, vanishing just as they had with Paul and the mouse before. But this time, the damage is irreversible. Percy has absorbed the warden's wife's brain tumor. His mind is broken. They send him away to the mental hospital, this time not as an employee but as a patient. Later, Paul goes to John's cell, struggling to understand. "Why did you do that?" he asks. John's voice is calm, almost sad. He says that Wild Bill was a truly evil man. When he had grabbed John's hand earlier, John had seen everything, seen the truth. John reaches out to Paul now. "Take my hand," he says. Paul hesitates, then grips it. In an instant, the vision floods Paul's mind. Wild Bill is the one who kidnapped and murdered the two little girls, the crime John was blamed for.
I'll kill her instead of you. You're making a noise. I'm gonna kill her. You understand? You understand?
John had found them too late, cradling their bodies when their father came upon the scene. The truth is clear now. Now Paul knows the truth. John is innocent. Paul quietly suggests helping him escape, sending him far away where no one can find him. But John refuses. He tells Paul he doesn't want to live anymore. "There's too much hate in the hearts of men," he says softly. "Every day I feel it. All that pain, all that anger. I can't take it anymore." Paul's voice breaks. "What will I say to God when I stand before him, knowing I killed one of his true miracles?" John's answer is gentle. "You tell him you did it out of kindness, that you set me free." Paul asks if there's anything he can do for John before the end. John gives him a few quiet requests, and one of them is to watch a movie. So Paul makes it happen. He sits with John, showing him the same film Paul would one day watch in the old age home. The film that had brought him to tears, remembering this moment.
Angels just like up in heaven.
Then the day of the execution arrives. They bring John to the electric chair. Before sitting down, John tells Paul that Mr. Jingles made it safely to the circus. Paul feels his throat tighten. The parents of the two murdered girls are there, waiting for justice they believe John deserves.
Kill him twice, you boys. You go on, kill that raping baby killer twice. That'll be fine.
John looks at them with deep sorrow and says the real burden he carries is failing to save their daughters.
I'm sorry for what I am.
He blames himself for not getting there in time. The guards place the black hood over his head, but John quietly pleads, "Please don't. I'm afraid of the dark."
Please, boss. I was afraid of the dark.
After that, they strap John into the electric chair. The current surges through him, and with his last breath, he softly whispers one word, "Heaven." The story then returns to the present. Old Paul explains that John's was the last execution he ever took part in. After that day, he requested a transfer to a different prison where only minor offenders were sent, people who could be rehabilitated. His listener, Elaine, struggles to believe the tale. So Paul asks her to come with him to the shelter he visits every morning. There he shows her something extraordinary, Mr. Jingles, still alive after all these decades. Paul tells her that because of John's gift, the mouse's life has been unnaturally long. Then with a quiet heaviness, he shares another truth. He himself is now 108 years old. When John touched him that day to reveal Wild Bill's guilt, he passed a small part of that gift to Paul as well. If a mouse can live so long, Paul says, I don't know how long I have left, but the gift feels like a curse. He's had to watch everyone he's loved done by one while he goes on. And one day, he says to Elaine, you'll be gone too. Maybe that's my punishment and my penance for helping kill a true innocent. Time passes and Elaine eventually dies as well. Paul is left alone again, still carrying the weight of that day in 1935 and the memory of John Coffey, the gentle giant who could take away pain but could never escape the cruelty of the world. Paul returns to the old age home, lost in thought. He reflects that everyone's journey down the Green Mile is different, but wonders just how long his own mile will be. The film is called The Green Mile because in the prison, when a condemned man was brought from his cell to the execution room, that final walk was known as the last mile. The corridor's floor was painted a dull green, so that last journey came to be called the Green Mile. This story leaves us with a lesson. John Coffey had the power to do almost anything, yet he never used it for himself. He chose to use it to help others, to bring goodness into the world. That, Paul understands, is what life should be, to put aside hatred, to love one another, and to live kindly. That is the heart of the Green Mile. If this story moved you even a little and made you realize how important it is for us to keep humanity alive, then hit the like button. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more upcoming videos.